yields. Thank you so very much. And Mr. Chabot, let me yield to you for 5 minutes, and thank you for accepting my apology. Thank you.
No problem. Madam Chair, the conditions of inmates at prisons is important, no question about that. But before there's an incarceration, a crime is committed. And back in the summer of 2020, following the horrific death of George Floyd, many protesters and elected officials, mostly Democrats, across the country proclaimed that because Mr. Floyd had died at the hands of a police officer, it was time to defund the police. In cities all across America, we did indeed see that defunding. And we've seen the federal prosecutor, again, overwhelmingly Democratic, they're liberal prosecutors, deciding that they no longer prosecute so-called low-level offenses like shoplifting, which, for example, resulted in mobs with sledgehammers rampaging through department stores. We've also seen the left's relentless campaign to eliminate cash bail. Criminals commit crimes, they're quickly released on low or no bail, and they go out and commit more crimes. It's even gotten too much for, of all people, Governor Newsom in California. Apparently, thieves have been raiding cargo containers on trains near downtown LA for months. Thousands of empty cardboard boxes were strewn after they'd been plundered. Newsom said it looked like a third world country.
1 p.m. Central.
No wonder we have a supply chain problem. Unfortunately, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the level of crime in America, particularly in cities. Madam Chair, I'd urge the majority to invite the Attorney General and the FBI to testify, the Director of the FBI to testify before this committee to discuss their strategy for combating the current spike of violence and crime in this nation. And now I'd like to direct the question to Ms. Kelly. As a result of the Antifa BLM-led marches, which in many cases led to riots and violence, there was an effort by the left, including some Democrats in Congress, to defund the police. And because most major cities across the country are controlled overwhelmingly by Democrats, many police departments were indeed defunded. For example, Portland, Oregon, $16 million cut. Baltimore, 23 million. Philadelphia, 33 million. San Francisco, 120 million. Austin, Texas, and LA, 150 million. And New York City cut its police department by $1 billion. So my question is, do you believe that this defunding of police has contributed to the increased crime rates that we're seeing currently?
This question is to me.
Yes, Ms. Kelly.
Oh, yes. Well, I assume so. I'm not an expert specifically on that. But I will say that the people who I hear from, based on my work, the disparity in the treatment between Capitol protesters and those who rioted and did far more destruction to the country, responsible for $2 billion worth of damages, hundreds or thousands of police officers attacked and assaulted, and nearly 24 deaths related to what happened in the summer of 2020. What I hear mostly from Americans is outrage over this disparity between the treatment of those rioters, activists, whatever you want to call them, and what happened for 4 hours at the Capitol. The DOJ and FBI rounding up people every single week, mostly on misdemeanors, but nonetheless treating them as domestic terrorists, while we have so many of the offenders from 2020 who have not been charged anywhere close to what these people have been.
Thank you. And just to follow up, I would also note that during the course of those riots that I mentioned earlier, there were approximately 2,000 police officers who were injured, some severely, and unfortunately, some died. I'd also note that one of the things that my Democratic colleagues in Congress wanted to do was to take away their qualified immunity, which would basically allow people to sue police officers in their personal capacity, in which case their pension funds, their home, their college funds for their kids could all be at risk of greedy trial lawyers. So, you know, what sane person is going to want to go into policing if you're actually going against their personal assets? So it's no wonder that we've seen morale decline to a considerable degree, less proactive policing in some communities across the country. and the resulting rise in crime rates. So whereas this is a very important topic, Madam Chair, that we're discussing today, we ought to also be discussing that crime and the dramatic impact it's having on the quality of life in this nation across the country. And I yield back.
Mr. Chabot, let me thank you. I would be remiss if I did not remind our committee that we know that during the January 6th investigation, there are several members in this Congress that they are concerned about. They are contributing to the incidents that occurred. And I think as we look at the video, we saw many people